Hi everybody, this is A.R.S.E, a Random Center Explains, and today we're going to talk about the third Sphinx in the Western Sahara Desert. And that begs the question why there is three Sphinx, or what do I mean by the third Sphinx in the Western Sahara? The primary Sphinx, the one that's most famous, is the one in Giza, the one on the Giza Plateau. And the date of that Sphinx has been debated for a long time. The water damage, or the effects of the what seems to be rain on the Sphinx's lower half, seems to come from a period at least 5 to 6 thousand years ago, when the Sahara used to be green and received a lot of rain. The Okay, so the date most given is around the age of the Great Pyramids, which is about 4,000 years, give or take, But the Sphinx used to be a lion, and the reason why it's so well preserved is that it was buried up to its head for millennia, I think. I'm pretty sure. And that head was recarved into a face, and then later the Sphinx was uncovered. But it used to be a lion. That much is pretty clear. And the proportion of the head to the rest of the lion body shows that the lion's head used to be a lot bigger than the current head on there, the human head. And the last time Leo rose due east on the spring equinox was, give or take, about 14,000 years ago. So there's more than sufficient evidence that points to the Sphinx being a lot older than 4,000 years. A lot older than the pyramids. And the reason why I say there's a third Sphinx in the Western Sahara would signify that there's a second Sphinx, which is located in Pakistan. If you Google the Pakistani Sphinx, you'll come up with these images. It's debated right now, but it's pretty clear. There's symmetrical carvings. There seems to be a temple. And the only reason they're not being investigated is because Pakistan is a Muslim country, and they are against history, I guess, So if it's not in their holy book, I guess they don't believe it, so they will not investigate anything older than, that's not in the Bible or whatever, even. But, so, like I said, there's a lot of obstacles to the Pakistani Sphinx being properly investigated, but it is visible. And if you look up the pictures, you could very well clearly see that it used to be a Sphinx. And so that would be the second Sphinx. The third Sphinx is nothing more than a couple mounds in the Western Sahara. And I'm basing this all off of a book I read about almost 40 years ago now. As a kid, I read this book about this man that went into the Western Sahara looking for a Sphinx, or a temple of some type, and he found one. He found the whole complex. It's still there, actually. If you draw a line from the Pakistani Sphinx to the one in Giza, and you keep going, that same line will hit the site in the Western Sahara, an equal distance away from, or the same distance from Pakistan to Giza, from Giza to the Western Sahara. You'll find the third Sphinx, meaning that they were all equally spaced, about, give or take, 3,000 miles apart, near the equator. So this means that there was about, to what are today's currently 3 time zones in each spacing of the Sphinx, and the fact that they were equal distance apart, and presumably all lions at one point, give or take, around 14,000 years ago. Like I said, modern archaeology is very Eurocentric, and they are very adverse to acknowledging older civilizations that were more advanced than they're giving credit for currently. When I say advanced, I don't mean like they had planes and technology and all that. What I mean by advanced is that there was division of labor, a common language, and a religion, and a city or a communal living space. So, like I said, you have, for religious reasons, the government of Pakistan refusing to allow people to investigate the Pakistani Sphinx. And then you have, for ideological reasons, what are known as isolationists, which are the mostly European scientists that refuse to acknowledge the contact between the Americas and the rest of the world before Christopher Columbus, despite the ample evidence, you know. And so you have these two ideologies working against what are known as the divisionists, which is what I am. Somebody who believes that Atlantis more than likely existed, and that the common stories and themes we see in the world religions all trace back to the one civilization that was destroyed in the Upper and or Younger Dryas, or in between. Because there was a 1200-year period between the Upper and Younger Dryas. So my working theory right now is that there was a civilization in North America more than 13,000 years ago. They were displaced by the Upper Dryas, which was a comet. In the intervening 1200 years, another civilization reestablished itself, more than likely in North Africa, but these same people was probably the same people from North America. They built what is now known as Atlantis to the Egyptians, which is the concentric circles you see in the Western Sahara by the A.R.S.E mountains, which, interestingly enough, Atlas is the mythological first king of Atlantis. Then you have the Younger Dryas, which was 1200 years after the Upper Dryas, give or take 11,600 years ago, where you have a solar plasma event, a polar shift, a melting of the glaciers that caused a 400-foot rise in sea levels. You had all this happen within a space of weeks or even months, maybe even weeks, days probably, you know, for some of it. And so you had this mass migration because of the flood, because the glaciers were in the northern hemisphere that got melted, moving southward, as evidenced in my last post, the gypsum sand dune footprints. And then you have, after that, you have all these tales around the world of the knowledge bringers, or, you know, as Mr. Graham Hancock puts it, the handbag of the gods motif that you see everywhere. And I think that was a spread of agriculture, because the Sumerians have a ancient oral story that's traditionally oral story about a fishman walking out of the sea and bringing civilization to the Mesopotamia area. And I believe that goes all the way back to the Younger Dryas event and the post-water B event, as it's known, that causes sea levels to rise 400 feet. So, like I said, so going back all the way back to the third Sphinx and why I brought it up, is that I really do believe there's a third Sphinx that could be. The complex is still there. The Sphinx is completely worn down because it was exposed, as you can see with the Pakistani Sphinx, that the exposure, you know, wore it out over the intervening, what I think would probably be at least 10,000 years. So, like I said, if you just do the simple, just get a ruler, get a map of West Asia, North Africa, measure the distance between the Pakistani Sphinx and the one in Giza, and then keep that ruler on the paper and go the equal distance away from Giza to the west, you'll end up in the Western Sahara. On that spot will be a complex that is more than likely older than 10,000 years. So yeah, like I said, there is not only a second Sphinx in Pakistan, there is more than likely a third Sphinx in the Western Sahara. And so that's my talk on the third Sphinx. It's there. Maybe you look at a map, you'll see what appears to be an old complex in that area, but the Sphinx is completely worn down. You can see the platform it was on, or the pedestal, or whatever you want to call it. And that's probably about it. And there's probably some outlines of what buildings used to be there. But like I said, it is there. What exactly was there is not exactly known, because that has been a lot less investigated than any of the other sites in North Africa, because of the because the third Sphinx is considered a, I don't know, it's just considered a theory right now, but it's there. I've seen the pictures of the area. It's very clearly that it was some type of temple site. And so that's my talk on the third Sphinx in the Western Sahara. Namaste, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next post.